Joining us now from New York is Caroline Rowe. She's an adjunct assistant professor at Georgetown University and the director of the New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy. Professor Rowe, it's good to have you with us on the programme. Can I just get your reaction to what we just heard from the UN Secretary General's spokesperson in New York talking about the position of Israel and its ongoing criticism of the territorial integrity of Syria being violated?
Certainly. Well, I think right now this is a primary concern, not only for the United Nations, but also international actors that may have welcomed the departure of the Assad regime, but ultimately are not happy with the prospect of further instability and potentially a flashpoint that could result in violent clashes in Syria as a result of Israel pushing beyond the Golan Heights to the outskirts of Damascus and threatening, of course, to conduct their own offensive in Syria against suspected Iran-aligned militia sites. And I think that this proves to be a potential flashpoint. For example, earlier today, we saw Turkish leader Erdogan issue a statement that indicated that they would confront Israeli efforts to consolidate further territory. And it's also to be expected that HTS, despite all of the efforts that they've put into this new salvation government, I think that HTS would also seek to confront recent Israeli territorial moves that have been made in Syria beyond the Golan.
Let's unpick this then from that, because obviously Israel is playing a very dangerous game, and that will be discussed this coming weekend, because we see the Secretary of State of the US and various administrations in Jordan this weekend. But really, the US, or certainly Biden's government, is on the way out. So one wonders what he's going to achieve by this meeting of senior politicians and dignitaries in Jordan this coming weekend.
Absolutely. Really, the Biden administration, they've got almost less than a month, just about a month left to try and mitigate this unfolding and spiraling crisis. And I think that strategy is just that. It's mitigation, trying to manage this and trying to ensure that there is no further violent spillover. This includes diplomacy with Turkey, that's what we saw today. We saw Blinken, of course, meet with Erdogan, as well as the foreign minister, Fidan of Turkey, as an effort to really try and ensure that Turkey does not move further into Syria's northeast to attack its Kurdish partners with the Syrian Democratic Forces. The United States is also very concerned about an outbreak of insurgent ISIS cells that are across Syria's Badia and across the northeast. And because of that, the United States is also seeking diplomacy and engagement with Turkey to try and put together some sort of, not necessarily a deal, but a crisis mitigation strategy to ensure that there's no ISIS breakout. And I think we'll see the same thing with Israel as well.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because, just within the last hour, our correspondent in Aleppo is already telling us that the Turks have really ignored that warning, you might say, from the US, if it is indeed a warning. They're certainly taking on the SDF in the east of the country. And Turkey, though it seems to be the main player right now, Ankara has to play a very careful, you might say, chess game, because it doesn't also want to irk Russia or Iran too much, because this is still a very fragile political scenario that's still unfolding on the ground in Syria.
Absolutely. And I think that it's very telling that, for example, today, we received some signals that Russia is not completely pulling its forces out from Syria. They're going to retain forces at 2 bases. In addition to that, now we, of course, see Israel pushing beyond the Golan. So Turkey is not the sole actor that's moving inside of Syria, despite the fact that we've seen signs recently that it appears to be the kingmaker in Damascus and the kingmaker in trying to shift the conditions in Syria. That that doesn't necessarily mean that it has the entire playing field to itself. And so I think that Turkey will indeed have to be quite cautious and careful as they make additional and further moves in the Northeast, also engaging with other actors that are interested in the outcome of this new transition in Syria. And I think that it's a very difficult landscape for Turkey moving forward.
So in terms of the senior diplomats and politicians that are all congregating in Amman in Jordan this weekend, what do you think we should be listening out for in terms of who holds the balance of power or what the next move might be on the ground, be it political or military?
Well, I think first and foremost, one of the key signs to look out for is whether there will be credibility and legitimacy assigned to HTS and this new salvation government and the transition process. I think the United States, they're trying to be cautious given the fact that HTS was previously and still is actually a designated terrorist organization. And I think that it'll be telling to see what other countries in the region are going to make their move first. Additionally, I think it's also going to be telling to see how the United States and Turkey engage in the Northeast, trying to set up red lines, with the United States sending continuous signals about where Turkey can operate and where it cannot operate. Where, of course, it can violate some of the previous agreements that have been made in the Northeast, but then also, of course, what point will the United States really draw that line? Yeah. Additionally, I think when we're looking in in and around Damascus, I think it'll be very interesting to see how the United States engages with Israel as well, to see if they will also draw a line in Damascus beyond the Golan Heights.
Yeah, so many moving parts to this story. It's been fascinating speaking to you. Professor Caroline Rose, thank you for joining us from New York.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.